Aside from the probable example of Salem committing entrapment in the case of Sadiq Ali within the New York landmark plot, Salem's motives aside for extravagant compensation does seem to show a nefarious side to him. But we also do have a public character witness of Salem who had quite a few personal encounters with him, Dr. M.T. Mehdi, or Mohammed Taqi Mehdi, an Iraqi-born Arab American who first came into the U.S. in 1954, attending UC Berkeley, studying politics, economics, and history, becoming director of the Arab Information Center in San Francisco. After traveling the country and dealing with setbacks in further education with the League of Arab States, while managing the office of the Organization of Arab Students, he became independent, which gave him liberty to put more time and devotion into becoming a grassroots political spokesman for the Arab cause in general and the Palestinians. Eventually basing himself in New York, Mehdi was hailed as the father of the Arab movement in America, as the founder and president of the American Arab Relations Action Committee, as one of the earliest, if not leading pro-Palestinian activists in the U.S. openly supporting the PLO. After the Kahana assassination and follow-up events in 1993, Mehdi gave counsel to the blind sheikh and Nasser supporters, which put him right in the circles of Imad Salem. Mehdi frequently spoke to the press, and right after the initial bust with the New York landmark plot, several newspapers interviewed Mehdi on June 27, 1993, where he spoke candidly on what was verifiable about Salem's personal status. Separate from Salem's true intentions, Mehdi wasn't always able to detect, based on how he carried himself around the blind sheikh and followers. The Post Star in Giant Falls, Double Agent in Bomb Plot Did Not Stay in Shadows by Tom Hayes, Associated Press. Saturday, a Muslim community leader who has known Salem for 2 years, M.T. Mehdi, charged at Salem was as much an instigator as he was an informant in the plot to assassinate political leaders and bomb sites throughout Manhattan. Salem helped recruit the suspected terrorist, then turned on them, said Mehdi. This was done without the sheikh's knowledge, Mehdi said. He is a very polite and friendly, a lovable person, Mehdi said of Salem. He easily got the respect and trust of his fellow Muslims. The suspects were very open to suggestions, he said. It's likely that he has suggested to the frustrated men that they have an Islamic religious duty to do something against the evil power of America. What about blowing up a few buildings and tunnels in New York? The Boston Globe, Muslim FBI informant had high profile, by Globe staff Tom Ashburn. He is a warm and polite brother Muslim, but I fear he suffered from a split personality, said M.T. Mehdi, an Arab American activist who knows both Salem and the Islamic cleric Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman. He did not infiltrate this group so much as organize and guide it, which is a violation of Islam. His disappearance was quickly noticed by the Muslims who frequent the mosque where Abdel Rahman preaches. Fluent in English, he had rushed to defend the men arrested in the February 26 bombing of the World Trade Center, and he acted as a translator when Rahman denied that Islamic teachings had prompted the attack. But in a recent interview with an Arab-speaking reporter for New York One, an all-news station, Salem hinted at why he might have turned on his friends, saying bitterly that the Trade Center bombing had given Muslims a bad name. Away from the sheikh and cameras, according to a report in yesterday's issue of the New York Times, Salem was working with members of the Joint Terrorist Task Force, which referred to him by the code name, the Colonel. Clearly bruised by the seeming treachery of his friend, Mehdi said, "He is a bigamist. He never divorced his Egyptian wife and she is suing him." To gain the confidence of the Muslim community, Mehdi said, Salem made it appear that he himself was under FBI surveillance by telling Muslim friends that agents had searched his home in connection with the Trade Center case. The depth of Salem's involvement in the alleged plot uncovered last week is sure to be an issue if the 8 suspects are tried. William Kunstler said in court on Thursday that he sensed that his client, Sadiq, had been set up. Even the criminal complaint against Sadiq refers to the presence of a CI at every substantive meeting held in the alleged bomb plot. Salem drove Sadiq everywhere and was influential in obtaining crucial bomb-making parts. I believe Salem suggested and encouraged these 5 disgruntled Sudanese nationals and 3 others to set up their bomb factory, Mehdi said. Asked about the possibility of entrapment defense, Mary Jo White, the assistant U.S. attorney handling the case, said, "We've of course done all we can do to avoid that issue coming up at trial, but I can't say any more."
Imad Salem was helping the feds on the inside, but he also seemed to be one of the more outspoken supporters of those arrested in the World Trade Center bombing. In fact, our Penny Crone spoke with him back in March at the arraignment of Mahmoud Abu Halima. At that time, Salem complained that he was being branded a bomber for being a supporter.
The New Jersey Record, Confidence Man, Aid to Sheikh Help Break Terror Ring, by staff writers David Glovin and John Mooney. Salem also kept a high profile, making himself available to the press and giving interviews in support of the alleged World Trade Center bombers in his Manhattan apartment. But at the recent news conference, Salem did not appear to fit in with the Sheikh's usual crowd of wide-eyed followers. Although he was sweating profusely, he was jovial and relaxed, appearing more self-assured than the other confidants who tend to dote on the Sheikh. For most of the time, Salem sat quietly at the rear of the room. I think he was against Sadat, his going to Jerusalem, his suppressing Egyptian intellectuals, said MT Mehdi. He's acting as a fireman who puts out a little brush fire in a nearby warehouse and goes to put it out, and he thereby appears as a hero, Mehdi said. During car rides to and from Brooklyn, Mehdi said, Salem, a former colonel in the Egyptian army, told him he had worked in internal security for Egyptian intelligence in the early 1980s and had been sent to train with the Green Berets in Georgia. Officials at the Egyptian consulate and embassy could not be reached to confirm this. These things are not contradictory, Mehdi said of Salem's work for the Egyptian government and Abdel Rahman. You can damn George Bush on one hand and support him on another. Reports on Saturday said Salem had philosophical differences with the alleged terrorist and the federal officials had pressured him to cooperate. Mehdi discounted the claims, however, saying Salem had a personality clash rather than a religious one with the suspects and was being sued by his wife for divorce because he had another wife in Egypt. Publicly at least, Salem professed to oppose bombing. The children at school are picking on my children, he said in one television interview after the World Trade Center bombing. They say, you're a terrorist. What are you doing over here? You're a Muslim. You are bombers. Of course, my daughter came home and she was very upset. Salem, who wanted acquaintances to pronounce his name in an Americanized manner, Salem, rather than Arabic-sounding Salem, was seeking permanent residency status in the United States, Mehdi said. He wanted to be a good Muslim and a good red-blooded American, he said. Mehdi, like Salem's neighbors in his Manhattan apartment, was stunned by the revelation. In Manhattan, Salem had lived what appeared to be a quiet and law-abiding life with his wife Karen, a jewelry designer, and their 2 children in what a neighbor said was an 8-room apartment. The San Francisco Examiner by Gene King of Reuters. Terrorist who came in from the cold was a Green Beret. Mehdi said that Salem, 43, was selected by the government to come here and get the specialized training in the early 1980s. A senior law enforcement official confirmed that Salem was the informer that he, his common-law German wife, and his 2 Egyptian-born children from his first marriage are in the Federal Witness Protection Program. Another source, close to the investigation, said Salem was being paid $1 million for his cooperation with authorities. He's getting big bucks, said a source. It's $1 million bucks. Salem said he was turning on his fellow Muslims because he didn't want innocent people getting hurt. Mehdi said Salem is seen in the Islamic community as a devout Muslim, but also as a soldier of fortune who is seeking, perhaps desperately, to escape both career and marital problems. Call him the terrorist who came in from the cold, he said. Mehdi said that Salem, a lieutenant colonel, left an apparently successful military career in Egypt and his first wife and came to the United States with their 2 children without permission or authorization from an Egyptian court. Salem became a U.S. citizen in 1992. But a month later, Mehdi got really in depth with how far back he interacted with Salem, and that he himself knew about Mehdi, and even mingled outside the blind sheikh circles. The Record, New Jersey, August 26, 1993. Mystery surrounds informant's role. He taped alleged terrorist. By Pierre Thomas and Eleanor Randolph via Washington Post News Service. To some, Salem is a hero who saved New York from a second terrorist attack. This one potentially far more devastating than the World Trade Center bombing, with bombs planted at the United Nations and in the Holland and Lincoln tunnels. To others, including the accused who have declared they are not guilty, the self-proclaimed Egyptian Secret Service agent is a greedy opportunist who lured a group of angry young Muslims into his own terrorist fantasy and then sold the plot to the U.S. government for $500,000. Savior or huckster, informer or provocateur, Salem is at the center stage in the ever-widening conspiracy case, which so far includes 15 defendants and involves plots not only to blow up buildings but to assassinate Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. The transcripts of his conversation with those now in prison, as well as his private tapings of FBI contacts apparently for his own protection, are expected to determine whether Salem spied on men already planning the alleged plot or led them into it. The man saved the city, said one New York police administrator, who asked not to be named with the trial pending. There is no doubt that he saved lives. Far from infiltrating a terrorist group, he helped organize one, appealing to young innocent men who were vulnerable, said Mohammed Mehdi. Strange and unpredictable, Salem has left a trail of unsolved mysteries about who he is, where he came from, and what his motives were. I think Imad Salem works for Imad Salem, said Ronald Kubi, trial attorney for Sadiq Ibrahim Sadiq Ali, accused as mastermind of the alleged plot to blow up the United Nations and other sites. A fast talker who worked his way into Abdel Rahman's inner circle, Salem easily won the confidence of the Sheikh's worry followers. In transcripts of tapes that have become available in recent weeks, Salem often questions the men, drawing out names and motives. But he also appeared to be boasting about his knowledge of explosives, including how much dynamite would be needed to blow up the United Nations. In an unrelated trial in Manhattan earlier this year, After Salem's auto was hit by a drunk driver, he told the court that during his time in the Egyptian Secret Service, before he came into the United States, he was trained to destroy things, such as ships. What other things were you trained in destroying? He was asked. Cars, planes, buildings, he answered. His foes don't simply call him a liar, but as Victoria Tonsing, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and an expert on criminal prosecution, said last week, these informers are con guys. They have to be people who are capable of creating another role. And in the context of his conversations with these people, it would be expected that Salem would be lying. That was the role he was supposed to play. But the primary issue here about Salem's words, is whether the defendant had a predisposition to commit the crime or whether there was entrapment. The informant talked to him, the accused, into it, she said. In a conspiracy case when there is no actual deed, like this one, the conversation becomes crucial, she said. The fact that the informer knew how to make bombs makes him more vulnerable to charges of entrapment, she said. But it's not the be-all, end-all. You have a defendant saying he wants to bomb the UN. Clearly he had already thought about it, and the informant is only making the means available to him. But David Lewis, a New York defense attorney, said that Salem's character could still become a key issue in the case, especially if the transcripts are confusing to a jury. In some cases, the first thing you do is snap the back of the informant, he said. If you cannot, the whole case goes bad for you. He was being developed by a confidential source, one law enforcement source said. There was a process, there was sporadic contact, developing trust. For the Muslims around Abdel Rahman, Salem just dropped out of nowhere 3 years ago. As a close associate of Abdel Rahman, Abdel Sattar, 33, put it. Several members of the New York Arab community recall seeing Salem first during Saeed Nosser's 1991 trial for the slaying of Rabbi Meir Kahane. Sometime in 1991, Mehdi, a supporter of Abdel Rahman, received a telephone call from Salem. He had seen me on television and he called to introduce himself, Mehdi said. He called me his grand, brilliant father. He had the ability to endear himself to me, then gradually ask questions. I had great confidence in him. The Sheikh had great confidence in him. Mehdi said that Salem offered to be his bodyguard, but he declined. Salem eventually became Abdel Rahman's occasional bodyguard, and even though some of Abdel Rahman's followers distrusted him, Abdel Rahman told them, "We have nothing to hide," according to Sattar.